Can you trust the results when you type med spa near me into ChatGPT or Google's Gemini? Today, I sit down with Michael Antosy, who spent 15 years in aesthetics marketing. We talk about how AI is now deciding which practices are trustworthy and which ones aren't. For med spa patients, it means no more guessing if that gorgeous Instagram feed is hiding a weekend-trained injector or counterfeit products. And for med spa owners, if your content is thin, AI is probably steering patients away from you right now. Plus, the truth about those trendy champagne Botox parties everyone's posting on social media. Remember to subscribe to hear the latest in med spa safety risks, industry secrets, and how to spot the red flags before you book your next appointment. So, Michael, thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Hey, Kate. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here and talking all things new and innovative in the world of AI.
So AI is kind of taking over the universe. I've already used it today to analyze a legal document that I'm being asked to sign. But I think that the big thing in marketing is about AI search now, right? So can you speak a little bit about how that's affecting not just how med spas are marketing themselves, but how consumers are finding med spas and what they're finding out about them?
Isn't it so crazy how we're using like AI almost in every aspect of our lives? I feel like I'm like carrying around my own personal assistant with me now. So I've also done the same thing with analyzing like legal documents to make sure that whoever I'm doing business with is above board and helping to keep me aware of all the risks as well too. You know, that's really shaping so much of just that level of like awareness and access to information is really shaping and reshaping how consumers are finding resources and how, you know, traditional SEO and websites and how that's really shifted the game in terms of how practices also put their positioning online as well too. You know, one of the biggest things that we've seen in terms of just an overall like shift on the consumer side is that when patients are seeking out services, you know, if I'm looking up Morpheus 8, if I'm looking up neurotoxin or, you know, body contouring, whatever that thing might be, what we've now seen shift with really AI search is that patients are no longer like doing this doom scrolling to try to like figure out like, all right, well, which is the practice that I should go to? You know, there's a joke that we have in marketing. Do you know the best place to bury a dead body?
On the second page of Google results.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So like now, like the joke has to be updated because it's now no longer on page 2 when there is no page 2 any longer, but it's actually like below the AI search results because the thing about AI search is that patients are just relying on the AI to tell them where to go to. And like now that we've been so used to like using our ChatGPTs or our Geminis and like just trusting that information that we're getting, that's really altered how patients are really making decisions. And so it's also been a challenge for practices as well to ask like, well, how do I get my practice there? How can I position myself to be the one that AI is recommending?
Right.
So it's really, really been a big shift, both again, from the business side as well as from the consumer side too.
The interesting thing for me is the AI search, it doesn't just tell you, you know, I don't know, the 3 closest med spas near me, but it will tell you about them and why. You know, like if you say, find me a med spa within a 15-minute drive of my house that has the best recommendations, it will list that. And then it'll tell you why it's telling you that, which is very convincing. Like, is it always right?
Yeah. So it's telling you why because of the information that it's able to like digest and gather from the actual website. So let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to like 2022. And I'll never forget. Do you remember like your first interaction with the ChatGPT?
The first one, I can't really remember.
I'll never forget this. And so I was driving and I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about this chat bot that it was AI generated, but you can tell the chat bot to like write a story of my life, but do it in Shakespearean prose and like just based around those prompts. Like so that was like my first thing about ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And when that first came on into the market, so many people were just like using it so much. And it kind of evolved into this thing of like, it's like this could actually be like a better Google for a lot of us.
Right.
Because it's a more precise answer that we're getting back. So what Google was doing to respond to that was really, it was unearthing a lot of big shifts and changes. And so just to kind of give you some context about Google, Google's always refining itself. It makes about 9 algorithm updates to its platform every single day. And what it's trying to do is it's trying to deliver the best search results for a Dr. Kate D. And arguably those could be very, very different than a Michael Antosy. That's what we call semantic research. Every so often, though, there will be a really big update that will come out onto the platform, onto the algorithm. And oftentimes Google will name these updates. So historically, there's been the Medic update back in 2018, and then there's the Hummingbird update, the Panda update. But these big updates, they're very, very infrequent. They don't happen often.
Yeah.
Since 2022, though, we have seen 4 core updates to the algorithm. And the biggest thing that Google is really doing now is to respond to this new AI world and ChatGPT. And so as marketers, it's been a bit of a challenge. It's been challenging just because things are shifting. Major things are shifting at a rapid pace. Think about it like you're getting like an earthquake, a huge earthquake that's hitting your neighborhood like every year.
Yeah.
But the constant thing, and kind of how Google has now kind of languaged the series of these big updates is what we call the helpful content update. And this is going back to your question of like, well, why is it even telling you the reason why it's recommending these things? The helpful content update really boils down to 2 main principles. Number 1 is that can a search really find information that lives on a website that cannot be found anywhere else? So a lot of practice owners and frankly, even patients in today's age, like they're thinking about like keywords like Botox near me, or where I live in Pennsylvania, it could be like Botox in Chadsford, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough though. Like what you want to really break away from is thinking about things like these keywords. And can I go and learn about something like Botox in this particular area that I really cannot find anywhere else? So that's been one of the biggest shifts, is that getting your content away from bots and keywords and thinking more about writing it in a much more common vernacular.
Right.
The second thing as well, too, that we've seen in terms of really big shift with this update is the fact that, if there are pages of content that actually live on a website that might be inferior, like, for example, we find like a lot of aesthetics wellness practices, if they have a wellness component, they might offer like a B12 shot, for example. Now, not a lot of practices are really concerned about generating more B12 patients. I mean, there might be a cohort that's out there, but generally they're looking to target more higher dollar value services and procedures. So they write really good content for the things that they want to be found for that will drive that revenue, but like they might have some inferior content that they just need to have, but they don't really care about it. The thing about this new helpful content update is that that inferior content can actually be pulling down the optimization for the website as a whole. So practices.
When you say inferior content, you mean that it's not written well, or it's minimal, or it's not accurate, or what's inferior about it?
It's minimal. It's not robust. And so like, let's just use this example again of like Botox versus B12. Like maybe if a practice wants more, filler patients, like they really write a lot of good content about Botox because again, it's something that they want to be found more for, but they might have like a sentence or 2 about B12. Okay. So that's what I talk about is that robustness and that disparity can actually affect the visibility as a whole. So practice owners need to be very, very strategic in terms of what are they doing. Like if they're going to have content that maybe they're not really caring about to drive visibility for, they still need to be able to beef that up, or they want to think about cutting it out.
So you're saying that websites like mine, where I wrote everything, because I'm so anal about like I can't have. So no offense to marketers, I think marketers are very smart, but I can't have a marketer who knows nothing about medicine writing about the medical procedures that I do in my spa. So I couldn't do it. It sounds so dumb. It sounds so markety. So I had to write it myself. And I actually gave myself like nerve damage for 3 weeks writing my website 24/7. But anyway, so you're saying that having done that actually is an advantage, because I've always felt like,
Totally.
Okay, That's phenomenal. I always wonder like who's actually reading it, because it's like I really thought about how I wanted to say it and what's in there and explain to patients exactly what things entail. And I always felt like these, websites for these, sort of, I will just call them schlocky places that don't even have a doctor anywhere near it. They look so glitzy and glam and people see it and then they go there. And, how do you tell the difference?
Well, the best gift that you or anyone that's listening to this that is a business owner, and frankly, even on the consumer side as well, too, the best gift that we all can have is content. Because
real, like not
right,
fake
right.
content.
Well,
Are you going to argue that it's good or bad to have AI write your content? So if you've been listening to the show, you know I've got stories for days about what goes on in med spas. I finally put them all in a book. It's called Med Spa Mayhem. I wrote it because I got tired of hearing about people getting hurt by providers who have no business holding a syringe. You'll read about real patients, real nightmares, but more importantly, you'll know exactly what to look for when you walk into any med spa and what questions to ask. It's part expose, part survival guide, and it might just save your life. Med Spa Mayhem will leave you informed, entertained, and a little shocked at what's really going on behind the business of the aesthetics industry. The link is in the episode description. Read it before you book your next appointment, because beauty should never come at the cost of your safety.
This is not a binary answer. Here's what I will say to you. Okay, the consumers listening to this, the practice owners listening to this, listen up. Because think about as a consumer, if you have questions about something and you're really serious about investing into that, that's a good buying signal, right? It means that, hey, if I want to understand, how many sessions of microneedling does one need in order to see a result? Or do I really, am I really going to have like a burn face after a CO2 laser? Those types of queries indicate that hey, we're really interested in investing into this service. And so as a consumer, if you can type in a search like that, or even into a ChatGPT, and a GPT is not only just giving you those answers, but it's also making localized recommendations, that's just helping to bridge that trust gap that much quicker. So it's from the consumer side, it's helping them to get access to the data and the information that they need much more expeditiously. On the practice ownership side, they're also generating visibility for high intent based searches, right? Not like tire kickers or say looky-loos that might be interested in just getting a discount. It's also making sure that when AI is recommending you, it's making that recommendation based around the depth and the resources and the richness of the information that lives on your website. So kind of boil this down, I would say the best type of content that as an aesthetics practice you can ever have is question and answers based content. Think about the common questions that patients are always asking you about a service or a subject matter. That's what you should be answering on your website. More specifically, that's what you should be answering on your website on that one procedure page. In other words, for every single service that you offer, make sure it has its own dedicated page to it, and you're really discussing that content in a rich question and answer based format. Sure. Now, look, is everyone going to read that content? Probably not. But it's the gasoline that makes your car go.
Right. And that's how Google finds you and someone asked this exact question. How many days of downtime am I going to have after my RF microneedling procedure? And this website answers that exact question, or these subset of websites answer that exact question. But the thing is, though, that question you might be asking nationally and not necessarily find the spa that answers that question near you. Does that matter?
That's a great question. I mean, generally speaking, when we're talking about this aspect of medicine or medicine in general, patients want to find doctors and providers who are in their backyard.
Yeah.
I used to live in Los Angeles and actually in Santa Monica. And so, I mean, if I was on the west side of LA, it's almost like long distance dating if I had to go see a doctor in Pasadena.
I think the last time I was at a conference in LA, I was in a cab from the airport to the hotel, and the the traffic was so bad that there was a butterfly that flew by faster than my cab was going. And I just thought, oh my God, I don't know how people deal with it. So I totally get that long distance thing. I think, here's an example of a search that I actually did, had nothing to do with med spas, but I was going to a concert in Portland, which is like a 3-hour drive away, and I have an electric car. So I Googled, I did an AI search where I said, okay, find me a hotel within walking distance of the concert venue that has EV chargers. And there was exactly one hotel. It found it. I booked it in 5 minutes. It saved me hours of trying to figure out where would have an EV charger. Now, I did call the hotel and confirm that it did indeed have that, because AI still is wrong sometimes, right? They tell you information that's completely wrong sometimes. And that's definitely true of medical advice. So I'll just say, don't use this to decide whether you're going to treat something or not, or decide your diagnosis, because AI really does say some really wrong things medically. But anyway, what I was thinking would be great is if you can ask AI, find me a medical spa within a 15-minute drive of my house that actually has a real aesthetically trained medical doctor that's in charge, that has licensed people, or a certified spa near me. And then it will actually tell you who that is. Yep. And hopefully they would even tell you, well, these two places don't have a doctor, and this place seems to have, no medical people at all. I mean, I don't know. It would be interesting to know if AI could figure all that out from their website.
So one of the things, going back to this whole helpful content update, if you're listening to this, if you're wanting to really understand how to survive in this new AI jungle that we're living in, there's an acronym that's called EAT. And if you happen to visit my Instagram, I filmed a little sketch about this. It's EAT it's EEAT. It stands for experience, expertise, authority factors, as well as trustworthiness.
I like that. So experience, expertise, authority.
Authoritativeness, yes, as well as trustworthiness.
And trustworthy. Okay. I like
These are all aspects of your strategy that you need to be very, very consistent with all of these different things. And so let me just kind of break this down, if I could, for the listeners, that way they understand. So when we talk about experience, what this really means is AI search is really wanting to see, again, how rich is your content? We've talked a lot about this on the top of this conversation, but making sure you have dedicated pages for every single service that you offer. Are you constructing content in a robust question and answer based format? So the more holistic that you are covering content within, it just only drives your credibility forward. It says to an AI search, wow, the author of this site really knows what they're talking about. Experience has everything to do with the provider's biography that exists on the website. Mm-hmm. And this is where I'll say a lot of folks they don't want to be braggadocious over themselves or their training, but I will also say to you that you want to get over that, because this is what AI wants to really understand, is that is the author, the owner of this practice that has this website, are they a person of their craft? Do they have they been invested into aesthetics for a long time? And
I will say it's super hard to be that kind of, braggy, whatever, whether it's on your website or on your Instagram, whatever. I can't tell you how many marketers have told me I have to lead with, Yale educated physician. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. That's like, I would, can't my work speak for itself? But I find that really, really interesting, because a lot of spas actually don't even have their staff or owner or anything on the website.
And for me, that's kind of like a red flag. It's like
it's a huge red flag. Like, who would go to that place? You don't even know who they are. It'll say about us, and it won't say anything about them.
Yes, I've seen it so much as well too, Kate. And but yeah, like the thing is that like when you're kind of hiding behind the curtain, if you're not talking about like the organizations that you're a part of, or the trainings that you have gone to, or the where you have gone for med school, or just any higher level education, You're just not showing these AI platforms that, hey, like this is a person that really can be trustworthy to be shown more of for these searches. So that's really, really important. If you've been peer reviewed, I know that you have 2 books that you've written.
I've written one book.
Oh, sorry.
I have written a lot of, I was in academics for a few years and I had like 14 publications total from my actual academic career. I don't know if Google those are all on, PubMed and stuff. Does Google find those? Probably not.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and linking those on your website are very, very important because again, it just shows that, hey, we're invested into what we're doing, that we are an expert. The authority factors. Let's talk about this. And this is where I'll use that word consistency. It's so important. Being consistent with things like what we call local listings. To be optimized for near me searches. Well, there's about 60 different what we call local directories, as well as 15 applications. And you can kind of think about these as being like mini search engines. But platforms like Google, ChatGPT, what they want to do is they want to trust and validate that you are a localized business, that you have consistency with your name, address, and phone number of your data among these profiles. And so that's very, very important to keep up with. Google review consistency is another authoritative factor. And look, I'll be the first to say this to you. You can't always believe what you read online, whether that be good or whether that be bad.
Yes. Well, I had a whole chapter about that in my book because, so I'm quite opinionated about that. But I realize, when you're in this space, you have to have reviews and you have to have a constant flow of reviews from your patients so that, people believe that you exist, believe you're good. They feel like they, have learned about your practice. But also, for the occasional person who's disgruntled for whatever reason. And luckily we don't have very many of those. But when they do, like I had somebody who called, never been to my spa, called, was going to book an appointment, but we always take a credit card to book an appointment. And they refused to give us a credit card and then cursed at my front desk, hung up on them, and immediately wrote a 1-star Yelp review saying, how dare they, require a credit card. And I was just like, you know what? They're doing us a favor, because if anybody reads that and agrees that that's an egregious thing to do, then they're probably not our person anyway. Totally. But you really need to have all your loyal patients write how great you are so that 1-star review sticks out like a sore thumb. Well, that doesn't fit in. So, and I don't agree with what that person was saying anyway, so that's okay.
I think how you're looking at that is the smartest way to look at. Actually, there's some data that supports that. If you're a 5.0 practice, it's almost like, what are you doing to influence your perfection? Yeah. I have a little story behind this because I think it's actually pretty funny, but it wasn't funny at the time, but it serves the point here. So I had a client of mine who was just obsessed with their 5.0 and, driving patient care was always top priority. And they relied on reviews to really advocate that message. So I get a call one day from this client and they're just in a frenetic mess. And they had their first 1-star Google review. And I'm like, congratulations. We've been waiting for this day to happen.
Yeah.
But no, I can't have this be my reputation. This is my reputation. This is my livelihood. I can't have this be the face of who I am. I'm like, listen, honestly, this is going to help you. So just let it alone. Don't touch it. They couldn't let it alone.
Uh-oh.
So whoever was inside the practice, I don't know if it was some employee or whatever, but the provider had told somebody to create a fake account and to then counteract this review. Basically saying, well, no, I disagree with you. I think that Dr. So-and-so is actually a really, really great doctor. And that's what they responded to with this review. So that patient that had initially, so that they initially left that one negative review, what they did is they re-engineered who the person was, and they were able to link the email account back to the practice itself. So this burner account became something that was completely transparent and out in the open. And then with that patient that had a gripe on, they screenshotted that and then posted it to like Google, Better Business Bureau, Yelp, like any site that you could see. And then I get a call a few days later asking me to like, hey, how do I fix this problem? I'm sorry, there's nothing that I can do. Like I said, just leave it alone. So yeah, you have to be very judicious when it comes to like bad reviews like that. I mean, I think in your particular case, like, yes, like, you obviously, your career, Kate, was all centered around providing great outcomes and great patient experiences. And so the fact that that sticks out as an outlier, actually, in my book, would be something that I would find to be very credible.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I will say with review responses, and this is where I see a lot of practices also get into trouble. And I'll just say this as a disclaimer, I am not an attorney, but you have to always respond to reviews in a HIPAA compliant way.
Right. Absolutely. And I think a lot of med spa owners, especially the ones that aren't legal, because doctors know this 100%. Yeah. And for the most part, medical practitioners like nurses and PAs also know this. But we are governed by HIPAA, and you cannot publicly even acknowledge that someone has ever even had anything done in your clinic or that they've stepped in the door. You can't publicly acknowledge that. All you can do is respond with a generic response saying, we pride ourselves in our quality services, blah, blah, blah. We cannot say, well, sorry, you feel that way, but, your skin was this, or you did this, or even acknowledge that they had the service there at all, right? You can't do it. And I see this all the time when you look at, part of my thing for this podcast is I do a lot of research. And so if you look at reviews for, rando med spas, there's all these responses that specifically respond to that complaint, right? Yeah. One of them even, talked about like, well, you brought your dog and the dog nipped at people and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you can't do that. No. You cannot do that. Okay. You can't. All you can do is respond in some generic, we pride ourselves in being fine, upstanding, doctors and nurses, and we try to make sure that every patient has a positive experience. And that's all you could do, right? So yes, totally agree. I think a lot of the, especially the illegal ones, really don't know about HIPAA. They don't know that they're covered by HIPAA, and they don't even know what that would really entail. Yeah.
Yeah. When I bring this up to clients, they're like, well, like, yeah, but like we have such a good relationship with this person. And my thought is like, look, that patient is not waiting around with bated breath on your response. We ain't got time to wait for that, right? Like everyone's busy, everyone's living their life. I mean, we've got kids, like all these other things. And so like, just protect yourself. You're absolutely right. Don't respond. Don't acknowledge their name. Don't acknowledge that they've had anything done. Like just say thank you to the review. Right.
And you can't, if you know who the person is and they're complaining about something and they didn't come directly to you, but they complained publicly, it's okay to privately message your patient and have a one-on-one talk with them, like, try to remedy the problem. And they might revise the review based on your actual service. But absolutely do not reply with any kind of public acknowledgement of that. It's not legal. So since we've gone on to this topic of, we realize that there's a big, two different tiers of med spas. I mean, there's so many illegal ones we've talked about on this podcast, but have you been, since you've worked with med spas for a long time, have you been put in any position, even just to observe something where you're like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on here that made you feel uncomfortable? Or I'm sure you must have over the years.
Don't try to get the rep's phone number to ask them for a date. One.
Oh my gosh, that's a good one.
When somebody shows up to your office, make sure that you're not coming out of a shower.
You mean a patient walking into your office?
Pardon?
A patient? I'm confused by that one.
I don't want to go too deep down on the rabbit hole, but no, look, okay. I mean, I have seen things that like, I'm always like, how the heck is this person in business? Mm-hmm. But look, I've heard this said before, and I think for this podcast, the message is good to reaffirm. You are a medical spa. That means you practice medicine first. So, I think that so many practices, they really get so caught up into the marketability of this, or this is kind of where we get into like more like the branding. I think, like having, a talks party with champagne, great. That's fun to do. But like, if that becomes kind of like your brand or your essence, hey, like we're always partying here, like it definitely always kind of gives me a little bit of the heebie-jeebies.
Well, but also, people can't consent to a medical procedure if they have had alcohol. So right. I wouldn't advertise that because it's, you're really crossing a lot of boundaries. And if you are going to serve alcohol at your event, or if you're a patient and you're going to go to one of these events, and they don't at least consent you before you have your first sip of champagne, that's kind of scary to me, because that's also a recipe for a lawsuit. If someone feeds you champagne and then you actually like go get Botox or whatever, it's like a Botox party, you could then sue them because you were inebriated when you signed that consent and you underwent a medical procedure and they served it to you. That is completely unethical. And it's not like, so when I first started, I was asked to do a Botox party. And I called my medical malpractice at the time. And, they were like, well, long story, I could do this, but I didn't feel comfortable doing it at a salon or whatever. Like I need my lighting and I need my chair and I need all the sterile things. So, and these ladies wanted to bring, wine to their Botox party. I'm like, okay, everybody's getting their Botox first. And when everybody's done, you all can whatever, or one by one as people finish, then they can go join the party. But I'm not doing procedures on anyone who's already been drinking. And they were okay with that, but it just was too dicey, but it's like, really common.
Why open up yourself to that risk? And I think that how you handled it was a responsible way. It's like, look, we'll have fun later. Let's get done here and make the main thing the main thing.
And just to be very clear, I don't do Botox parties. This was like 10 years ago when I was first starting. And I really, was way more clueless than I was, but two, had the time, right? I just, I was brand new. Now we're very busy. We don't do Botox parties, but they're very common. And I think the worst are the ones where there's somebody coming into a beauty salon who's not a doctor, because they can't legally do that. And there's no way malpractice is covering that. So there's so many things about that's illegal. So I know it's very common, and a lot of people listening probably get their Botox at one of these places where once a month someone shows up and they all have a glass of wine and get I would not ever do that. Don't do it. Too dangerous and totally illegal. Anyway.
Another thing on the compliance side that I think it's really valuable to understand, this is, for both listeners and consumers as well as business owners too. If you want to understand like the credibility of your practice that you're considering going to, look for ADA compliancy on their website. There should be something on the bottom right-hand corner, and most credible marketing companies will do this today. But, as a healthcare business, there are just certain accessibility guidelines when it comes to your digital presence that you are upheld to meet.
So, but just as I did look into this a lot over the years, and there are a couple different ways to be ADA compliant. That little button, is an overlay. So you can take your website and put this overlay on, and it's way, way cheaper than building a website from the ground up that's ADA compliant. Way more expensive. You're going to pay a developer probably many, many, many thousands of dollars to do that. But not every website that does not have the little button is not ADA compliant. Right. Most of them aren't. But I personally hate the little button because it gets in the way and you can't get rid of it. And on a small device, especially, old people like me who need readers, it takes up a lot of real estate on a cell phone. So that's not my favorite, but just so people know, it's not 100% button or no button.
And I agree with you there. To be really fully, it needs to be integrated into the website's infrastructure, the pages. But regardless of that, though, it is a marker. So as a patient, as you're looking at this, it's not just one thing, right? It's about how many parts of this really come in together. So ADA can help with advocating credibility. Provider, how well their biography is listed, can help with providing some of that expertise. Lots of galleries and having lots of cases to showcase the breadth of the work concerning that. What I will say, though, is that there have been a lot of lawsuits that have been happening on the business side of things for practice owners that do not meet that standard. Especially, like, it's a very easy thing for visually to see if you have it or if you don't have it. By not having it, it does expose some potential legal risk. There are attorneys that will serve these, very frivolous lawsuits for that. And they'll say that they're a patient of record, so on and so forth. And so, yeah, you always just want to make sure that with how you're building out your site and presenting that's actually also part of the final T, which is having a website that is trustworthy. And that ADA is definitely a factor that goes into that from a visibility perspective.
When I am looking at someone's website, I go straight to the About page or Meet Our Staff or Meet Our Doctors page and see who's there, right? And who's providing the services and who's the medical director. And then, of course, as part of the Med Spa board, I look up everybody's license. It's amazing how many people say they're board certified when they're not. So that's one thing I've found a ton of in the last, since we launched, is, one guy who says he's board certified in emergency medicine, and he's definitely not that, right? So there are these fake board certifications, meaning not recognized. There are these week-long courses where, not even week, there are several organizations that offer, board certification after 2 very short 3 to 5 day courses.
Right.
And so they might be board certified by that fake board and never got board certified in their specialty and say, so-and-so is a board certified physician who is certified by and then lists anti-aging medicine and then board of emergency medicine. And it's really, they're only board certified by the fake one, not the real one. And to me, as a physician, I'm just telling you that's massively significant because, my board certification, there went into that, not just 4 years of med school, but, 6 years of training and 3 exams, one of which was an in-person oral exam. And that's why I'm board certified 10 years of my life, as opposed to, a 3-day course and a 5-day course. Like, it's not the same, right? So I do think it's interesting. Do you think that AI comes up with that? Like, if you search for, find me a med spa near me with a real doctor at it, it'll find that, I assume.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's really the cool thing is that, like, you can really become as nuanced as you really want to be. And that's where we talk about, like, search intention. Like, you can paint with a broad stroke or, like, try to cast out a net and just get as much, visibility as you can. Or are you really trying to maybe fish with a particular bait with a fishing line to only get one type of, patient or find one type of practice that suits your interest? Mm-hmm. I think that really, as things just continue to evolve and to grow, and as us as consumers as well as business owners really just have this constant practice of just, searching more intently and shorter or with more specificity, that's where, again, a lot of the content strategies become so important for your online presence and digital strategy. And it's really interesting because things are kind of coming back around. Like, when I was first in this space, like, everyone was just talking about SEO and where am I ranking? And really, when social media really became a thing, it's like, okay, everyone's kind of gravitating more into social media and how much content that they're producing. And then that was more the proliferation of, like, paid social media ads that we would be running and Google ads. And ads definitely have their place. But if you're just thinking about, now I'm talking now to the business owners here who are listening to this, ads definitely have their place in terms of it being valuable. But if you're doing that without thinking about your content strategy, you are putting together a marketing framework that is going to be very, very, very expensive for you to continue to maintain.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think this is the first conversation I've had about AI that made me optimistic about this particular thing, because now I think if you are on the consumer side and you are looking for a top med spa within, 15-minute drive of your house, right? You can actually plug in a search that says, find me a med spa that's trustworthy, that has authority, that has real doctors and is, legally compliant and has licensed people in it. You could just plug in a search for that and it's going to actually find that for you, because before you just found med spas that was like really hard to tell, right? It was like, well, who's I think that's really encouraging, actually. And actually, that's exciting also because there's an incentive for medical spas to actually put their medical director on the website. There's an incentive for that.
Well, like not only that, but it's like it's cutting out the fat. I think both on the consumer side as well as the business owner side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's exciting. I mean, I think it's a positive turn of events. I mean, we're going to destroy the planet creating this, but at least we'll have all this information at our fingertips. And since this podcast is not about saving the planet from environmental disaster, I guess we won't cover how much water it takes for one AI query. I don't even know, but it's probably many, many gallons.
Oh gosh. The only thing that I can equate that to is like it's how much water it takes to like grow one almond.
Yes. Well, yeah. And guilty of putting almond milk in my smoothie every day too. But yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I'm in Seattle, so we're very, very techie here. And there are a lot of people in Seattle building the cloud, meaning creating data centers and all over the country. The amount of water that it takes to service a data center. I mean, they've dried up entire counties of water supplies trying to, create these giant data centers. So it's that part of it's a little scary. I'm hoping that someone comes along and solves that problem. Anyway, is there one piece of advice that you would offer practice owners, and then separately one piece of advice you would offer consumers based on your experience in the last 15 years, if you had to summarize it down to one piece?
All right. So if the practice owners, we're talking about just marketing in general, don't get caught up in the hype. I think the cool thing about AI is that it's an emerging thing, but a lot of the core principles really have not changed. So providing good content, good service, good information. And so that's the part where I would say, make sure you're sticking to your values and your principles. And when it comes to effective, consistency is the key. If there's one thing that I can say that has been a big shift with AI, is that the practices that are winning on their digital strategies, they're not looking at their marketing as being siloed. They're looking at their marketing as being cohesive. And all those parts speak to one another. You can't, sure. My example I just said is like, hey, sure, you could pay for ads, but it's a very gluttonous form of marketing that does not build a scalable infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So systems are going to be the ones that win the day, as well as practices that are very, very consistent. Look, on the consumer side, I have seen some of the best marketed doctors that might not be the best practitioners. And the flip side goes the same way as well too. Like the worst marketed really could be some of the best clinicians. So like, do your research. Don't make like, oh, I got to go get this done. I'm gonna go get it done right now. I mean, put the time and investing into, who is this person that you're going to be going to? If it's an FNP or a PA or a doctor, whomever, you have to make the right decision for yourself. I had a hair restoration done about 20 years ago, and I was balding at a really young age, and it didn't help that I had a mother who was a hairstylist as well. But, I didn't feel comfortable with it. I missed my hair. I didn't see myself as a balding young 20-year-old. And so, I got a hair restoration done. I saw a few different doctors. The guy who I ultimately chose to go to, and this was the closing line for me, he had said to me, his name is Dr. Tim Carmen. He's in San Diego, and this is not a plug for him, but he was the guy that said to me, I kept on calling him Dr. Carmen, and he was like, listen, knock it off with this Dr. Carmen bullshit. He goes, if I'm gonna do this with you, you're gonna call me Tim, because we're in this together. Yeah. So that for me was just like, oh, like I got my partner. And that to me, I think is one of the most invaluable things that you can find within healthcare, people that are going to go down the journey with you. And you clearly have been very successful with that at your practice.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And, I consider myself an educator. So like I give people all the information, I teach them about stuff and then it's their choice, right? I'm not trying to sell something, I think that, if you are looking for a provider, and as a marketer too, like I just think when you present the providers as knowledgeable, they know their craft, they are your partner as a patient, right? Then that has a lot more meaning than all the glitz and glam and all the pretty pictures and everything. I think that's the most important thing. So that's a great story.
Always be helping. I think that's those that in this content is so important as well too, because it's helping the patient make their decision. So if you can adopt that servant mindset, I think that those are that always win the day.
So Michael, thanks so much for being with me on the podcast today. Just for everyone listening, we will have links to how to reach Michael Antosy in the show notes. And just thanks so much. It was really such a pleasure speaking with you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate you having me on here. I hope that this has been valuable for your listeners. But yeah, I would love to do it again sometime.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Thanks. Thanks for listening. If you found this helpful, do me a favor and share it with a friend who's considering any aesthetic treatments. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and drop a comment telling me your biggest takeaway. I actually read them all. Let's keep each other safe and elevate the standards in the med spa industry.